I'm absolutely ecstatic to see how many people showed up on a cold winter night in Northern California to think about libraries and kids and how libraries and educational technology and students of today come together to think and learn differently than they did perhaps when some of you who have the same color hair that I do used libraries for their education. I'm Ann Wolpert, and I'm the Director of Libraries at MIT, and I'm taking my name tag off, not because I want to be incognito, but because the videographer in the back of the room, Hank, give a little wave. The videographer in the back of the room is recording this session, and after he's finished doing his high-quality processing on it, it's going to go up on Tech TV. And if you ask a question, you'll be able to see yourself getting that question answered. So just a little heads up that you're going to be on television if you ask a question. So I hope you will ask a question. Because it'll be pretty terrible if I get to the end of this talk and everyone's fallen asleep. So just help me out here and pay attention and ask a few questions when we get to the end. My job at MIT is to run the Institute library system, but my portfolio is a little bit larger than that. So I'm interested on many dimensions in the way kids learn today at universities. My portfolio includes the MIT Press. It includes Technology Review, which some of you may read regularly on the web page that accompanies that. I chair the board of Technology Review. It includes the Distance Education Group at MIT, which runs the distance education classrooms and supports video conferencing capabilities across the Institute that enable students who are working across the world to conference with one another. And it also includes the Video Capture Group, which is why I'm so respectful of Hank and the good work that he's doing today to get us all onto Tech TV. And Tech TV is part of that. So when I think about kids who come to MIT today and what they need to learn and the world that they're going to be going out into, it's quite a different environment than what I learned to do when I went to library school and the way I got my degrees as I was going through school. And we're going to start here if we can. This is an Apple clicker, which is way too fancy for my taste. I like the big clunky ones. But let me see if I'm going to be able to get a signal here. Oh. Nope. It's not working, Stephen. Tech support. It's his Apple. Don't tell anybody. I use the old-fashioned Windows kinds of machines. There, you got it. You may need to.
That one.
Yeah, that's what I was doing. Maybe I didn't have it straight on. Hold it up. All right.
Shall I sit there and change them for you?
No, thank you. Oh, maybe, but we'll see. I'll try it. We'll see. Right. So when you think about libraries, what you may know is that once upon a time, resources were scarce. And if you wanted access to high-quality information, you had to go to a library to use it. And not only that, you had to learn the way libraries organized information. You had to put up with their arcane systems, and you had to tolerate librarians who ran around and shushed you all the time and deal with their rules, and that was how you got access to high-quality information. Well, I'm here to tell you that that world has changed. We have gone from a world of scarcity to a world of abundance. And as many people have said, data is plentiful, information is valuable, knowledge is priceless. So in today's world, there are abundant resources on the web, through websites all over the place. Search engines are totally ubiquitous, mindlessly easy to use. give you the appearance that you're getting anything you want when you type in a few keywords. And it's time and attention that have become scarce. So for a library like the libraries at MIT, who are working with students who are trying to get through a rigorous program like MIT's, we are confronted with a group of students who think they know how to search. They've been doing it all their lives. They're absolutely confident that they're very good at it. They have gotten to where they've gotten by following a path that says good enough is usually good enough. So what I can find on the web, my search skills are really great, and information doesn't mean anything to me unless it's convenient. So there are a lot of people who care about college students today. The Pew Charitable Trust is one of many foundations that track internet and society. And they're very interested in the way college students, in the very short period of time that the web has become available, have changed their information-seeking behavior. How do college students who grew up on the web, I don't know if you are familiar with the Beloit College study, where they capture what incoming freshmen think about the world, know about the world, what their frame of reference is as they approach college. And it's shocking when you realize that the current generation of kids who arrived at MIT this fall have been on the internet their entire lives. This is what they live and breathe. They have been on the web their whole lives. There are other things that would be really amazing to you if you understood how young they are. But in any event, this is the first really, truly digital generation. They live on the web. They use search engines. I didn't put the instant messaging numbers up here because I didn't have enough lines, but 75% of MIT freshmen IM all the time. So they're on the internet, they're on the web, they live in email. 99% of MIT students are on email. It's the same number as we have here. And they really like search engines because that's how they grew up. For many of these kids, they didn't even have a library in their high school or in their middle school. The libraries were taken out, banks of computers were put in, and so they have learned to navigate the world of information, to seek information, and to exchange information in this kind of an environment. And on the web are what are called expert sites, where you put a question out to the world and somebody answers it. It's not unlike walking into an elevator and saying, so what do you think the specific gravity of this substance is? And getting the answer that somebody gives you, but it's classified as an expert system. So this is the way kids seek information. And teachers who are trying to teach people how to do research, kids how to do research, often tell them they cannot use Wikipedia. Not because Wikipedia isn't necessarily wrong, but because it's too easy and it's too simple. Right? And the world is more complicated than that. But the good news for libraries and librarians is that this generation of so-called digital natives have come to have a certain, because of their level of experience, they have come to have a certain level, I don't want to call it cynicism, but sort of maybe a lack of confidence in what they get on the web. And so they have begun to turn to libraries because from their point of view, in a world where information is abundant and time is scarce, the most valuable thing they can find is a place to go for information where they can be guaranteed of the accuracy and where they can have confidence in the trustworthiness of that information. And so at MIT, where we're dealing with these really smart students, it's a terrific sign to me, a great advantage, that the students who come to MIT really have come around the loop again to trust libraries and think of them as a place that you go for trustworthy information. I'm pretty sure I can do this if I try. All right. So as students come back to libraries and think about what they need for libraries, again, there's a lot of survey data on what it is they want from libraries. And if you look at this list, it's really kind of surprising, because only 2 of the things that college students want from their library could be considered new. Right? What they want are more books. Kids like books. They have been on the web for so long, and they've been dealing with atomized information, a factoid here, a little bit of something there, and they look at books and they say, wow, this is like a pretty interesting medium. It's organized, and it's got this index thingy in the back, and it's got a table of contents, and you can navigate your way through it, and you can find what you want, and you go back to the same page, and it's still there. You know, there's a lot to recommend a book. It's a useful mechanism, right? So kids across the land in college, they want more books. They like books. It's a good medium. They want longer hours. They want the library to be open 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. They work in libraries. They need places to go that are distraction-free, where everybody around them has to turn off their cell phones, where there's an opportunity to concentrate. And what MIT kids tell us is they want to be in a place where they can work together, or they can work alone together. So if you think about a library and you walk in there, there's a kind of a zeitgeist to this place where you walk in there and you know this is a spot where you're going to sit down and you're going to study. And if you believe in electromagnetic brain waves, as people did in the late 1800s, you have to imagine that there is this climate there where people come to work and they settle in their chairs and they get work done. What they do want is more computers, because even at MIT, where the kids all have their own computers, they don't necessarily want to carry them with them. They got a lot of stuff in their backpacks already, and if they can get a computer in the library, then they can do some of their work there, put it on a thumb drive, take it home, and do what they need to do. And of course they want everything online, because when they grew up online, so they also want it online. So they want places to study. They don't want it to cost them money, because they've already learned how much it costs if you have to buy stuff from outside sources to get your work done. And so some of it's what you think of as traditional library services, and yet some of it's quite new. So at MIT, we have this really interesting group of people that we need to support. MIT has 10,300 students, give or take. Of those, about 4,200 are undergraduate students. The others are master's and PhD students. So we have a very concentrated group of students undergraduate students who've come to MIT to learn. And of course, engineering is still the big kahuna at the Institute. Lots of engineering students. But if you think about the way the schools are divided at MIT and the community that the MIT libraries have to support, there are actually 38 independent departments at MIT, and we have to collect deeply and broadly for each one of those academic areas. And in addition to that, you see here that management is a big chunk of that. Electrical engineering and computer science is the largest portion of the engineering school. But the first-year students are 10% of the class. And you recall that all the first-year students at MIT have to take a common platform of educational experiences. So we have a tremendously varied group of undergraduate students, about 1,000 of whom are in their first year experience, completely overwhelmed by being at MIT. And the rest are deeply engaged in whatever their major happens to be. And actually, these programs are increasingly interdisciplinary. If you have a very active lecture program here in Northern California, and so you hear people, faculty, come and talk about what's going on at MIT. And we used to say it's interdisciplinary, and now we say it's multidisciplinary. The other thing that's interesting about MIT is the students are operating at different levels. So of the different schools, you can see the green bars are people who are working for PhDs. So we have a certain community of students at MIT who are operating at very high levels of study in PhD programs. But we also have the blue bars who are our undergraduate students. And building a collection of materials and developing a series of services and programs for a community that's that varied across the school gives us quite an interesting distributed, yes sir?
What is SAP? S-A-P?
School of Architecture and Planning.
Thank you.
School of Architecture and Planning, School of Engineering, School of Humanities, Arts and Social Sciences, School of Management, School of Science, and Health Sciences and Technology. Thank you. You remember, we call buildings by numbers and everything else by an acronym. So MIT's educational program, no matter what level it's at, is quite distinctive. So MIT faculty set out to teach concepts. I heard the other day that something on the order of 67% of what an undergraduate student will learn who's graduating this year will be obsolete within 5 or 10 years. So it's very important to the faculty that they teach concepts as well as practical applications. The kids want the practical application. They sort of get it that maybe they need the concepts, but they came to MIT to change the world and to build things and to make a difference. So they struggle through this process of learning concepts, and the concepts are often taught in the way that you're going to be familiar with if you're an MIT alum, which is lecture, recitation, P-sets, exams, rinse and repeat, right? Lecture. And so the kids come to MIT and they spend their first year, they came there to make a difference in the world and to do interesting things with an engineering and science education. And they're doing problem sets. So MIT is at the moment examining this question about how do you transform an education that was built on that kind of a structure into a more interactive kind of educational experience. And they're working now to integrate into the program a notion that problem solving doesn't just involve one kind of thinking. It actually involves many ways of solving a problem. There are ways to think humanistically about a problem that you're confronted with. You know, it's going to have its technical aspects, but it's going to have its human aspects too. It's going to have its social science aspects. It's going to have to think of a problem on more than one simple dimension. So they try to teach students scientific ways of approaching a problem, humanistic and social science ways of approaching it, and engineering ways of approaching a problem. So that when the kids get the concepts and they're out in the world, they have more than one set of tools to use when they're solving problems. Obviously, the programs at MIT are based on a theory of experimentation and research. You don't just theorize about things. You get your theory to the point where you want to try something, and then you try it. And there's a new emphasis at MIT on the need to be able to express your ideas and in writing and verbally if you're going to be successful in the world. How are you going to change the world if you can't talk to people about what you're doing and write what you're doing? But the last and favorite one that's my own personal theory is that part of what MIT students learn when they come to MIT is time management. MIT students are amazing. They are just the most phenomenal people in the world. From the standpoint of the libraries, though, we have particular challenges because of the way they approach life, right? These are the kids who, when they were 4 years old, would not hold your hand when you were crossing the street. No, I'm going to do it myself. And these are the kids who took apart your kitchen radio when your back was turned. And these are the kids who said, I don't want any help. I'm going to figure this out all by myself. Right? So when they come to MIT and they want to change the world, they want to figure it out for themselves. So if you're thinking about how you're going to help students learn how to learn for a lifetime, which is part of what the mission of the MIT libraries is, you have to do it in the context of understanding that these are kids who don't want your help. They want to figure it out for themselves, which is great, and they're smart, but shaping programs that reach them so that they can open their minds to new ways of doing things is really an interesting challenge for us. And we believe we're up to it in the libraries. So the way I really, for the first time, I think, understood what an MIT student's life is, and additionally what our challenges in the libraries in helping them learn how to learn, comes from this chart. This is a chart that is put out by the Office of Undergraduate Advising and Academic Programs. And it is designed to help a student, a freshman at MIT, understand how to manage their time. So they say, okay, you're taking 4 courses and 1 freshman advisor course. You've got, for each class, you've got, let me find my clicker here. For each class, you've got a certain number of hours in lecture and recitation. You've got laboratory work in many instances. And then you have the number of hours that you're expected, if you're a normal student, that you're expected to spend outside the classroom performing that academic work. And that's if you're normal. I mean, and as we all know, it's like Lake Wobegon. All the children are above normal, but some of them have to work harder than others on certain subjects. But this was the shocking number to me: 54 hours a week just on the basic academics. That's more hours than most of us work. So on top of that, then you got sports, you got club activities, you got music, you got your part-time job because you've got earn a little money for walking around. You got time with your friends. You got your Facebook page to maintain. You got maybe personal hygiene. You got to call your mom, and at some point you're going to sleep. We hope.
5.11 this chemistry, right?
Yeah, it is. See, yeah, you remember. Yeah. So I'm looking at this number the first time I see it, and I'm saying, how am I going to make kids think about learning how to use information resources in an environment where they're working more hours than most people are awake, and probably more than they're awake. So in that context, and maybe when we have them, they're half asleep anyway. So the first thing we did was get some comfy chairs, because anybody who's working that long and comes in the library ought to have a comfy chair to sit in. Right? And when we renovated the main reading room in Barker Engineering, we made sure we kept those comfy chairs, some of which you may even remember.
If you're working 12 hours a week, that's 84 hours. So they're not working that hour.
They're not sleeping much. I think I'm
12
not.
hours a day.
I'm sorry, 12 hours a day. Thank you. and this is, there we go. So when these kids are seeking information, their choices are, of course, context specific, and they're situation specific, but there are three overriding principles that govern how they look for information. It better be free, because they don't have a lot of money, right? So part of what the MIT libraries do is build for them a collection of free resources that are specifically targeted and curated for what they're learning. It had better be familiar and convenient, because they often feel as though they don't have time. You know, my first slide, how you had to learn how to use a library. Well, they've never had to learn how to use a library. They didn't have libraries in their high schools. They don't know how to use a library. They think the web is going to answer their questions. They're familiar with it. So their information-seeking behavior is going to focus on what's familiar and what's convenient.
Do they still buy textbooks?
Yeah. Although that's a lecture for another day. That's a complicated one, because textbooks have become so expensive. Right? So we do a lot also to provide them with the basic material they need for their courses in the event they can't afford a textbook. We get electronic textbooks where we can. But these are basically the three overriding principles that govern what students look for when they're trying to seek information. Okay. Now, we know what's familiar to MIT students, because we know where they've been going for information all their lives to date. And we know they're going to YouTube. And when they get to YouTube, they aren't confronted with some Boolean search problem, or they're not asked to think about mesh subject headings so that they can figure out exactly what kind of animal study they're looking for. You know what they get? They get a single search box, and they type a string of words in it, and if they're lucky, what they're looking for comes back. And behind the scenes, magic happens. They have no idea how those algorithms work. They have no idea what's behind the curtain. All they know is they type a word in there, and some kind of magic goes on behind the scenes, and some set of search results is delivered to them.
They don't go to Google?
They also go to Flickr, and guess what they find at Flickr? A single search box where they type in a word, and some kind of magic happens behind the scenes, and that's where they get their photographs and images that they use in their high school reports. Right? If I can make this change, I can't make this change. Ah, there we go. And they go to Google, of course. And Google is even more magical because you get the white screen, you type in something, and magic happens. So they have been trained all their lives to find a simple search box into which you type a bunch of words, and magic happens, and somehow or other the wizard algorithm delivers to them what they want. And they never go below 3 pages where the garbage appears. Right? And I'm not complaining. I am a big fan of Google. Actually, I use Yahoo, I use Google, and I would use a different clicker if I could get it to change. There we go. So here's a search I did on the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and I have to say, what's not to like about the algorithm? Because look what came up. Right? Which tells me that people search on the MIT libraries often enough so that whatever magic goes on behind the scenes is producing out of 31 million, I think that says 31, search results. Ta-da! The MIT libraries appear on the first page, so it must be brilliant is all I can say. But I ran this exact same search 5 minutes later, and there were 61 million, almost 61 million, but the MIT libraries were still there too. So the vagaries of what you get. One of the things that we do when we're teaching kids about these search engines and what you can trust and what you can't trust and how to sort of evaluate what you're getting is because so much of what happens in the behind the scenes in these search engines is increasingly tailored to what you have looked for before, that we ask kids to sit side by side and make the same, type the same language into the text box and look at the different results they get back, because the algorithms now tailor your results to what your personal history of searching has been. And it's a bit of a revelation. Nobody knows how the algorithms work to begin with, but it's a bit of a revelation to people. If you run this exercise at your next party, have everybody search, and you get different result sets back. So it's part of how you reach out to kids and help them understand what they're actually getting. I don't know why I'm having so much trouble with this here. I don't know, Stephen, you may have to come in a little higher. Ah, thank you. So one of the things we did when we realized how important Google was to students is we went to talk to them. And there is a service called Google Scholar, which some of you may use. It's a different service from the big Google. And it is actually intending and increasingly being successful at finding those works that are in the Google index that actually are somewhat scholarly in nature, and returning those works. So as you can, well, let me just forward it on. And the other thing that's good about I don't know. Up. There we go. Thanks. I think I must be pointing at the floor or something. Thanks. So, this is so blurry. I apologize for that. So the other thing that's interesting about Google Scholar is you can go into it and you can set preferences. So I went into Google Scholar and I set preferences that said, I'm interested in I'm not interested in legal stuff. I'm interested in searches on scholarly articles. And it says you can set preferences. So I set my preferences for the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, for full text items that MIT libraries subscribe to. And I also set it for WorldCat, which is an international database to which MIT libraries also subscribe, so that it will pop up result sets that came out of those. So when I do a search in Google Scholar, I will get back result sets for works to which the MIT libraries subscribe, and I will be able to link directly to those result sets without having to pay. I won't get asked for money. Behind the scenes, they will link me directly to the services to which the MIT libraries subscribe. Thank you. And we also went to talk to Amazon, because we knew that a lot of our faculty and some of our students grew up looking for books on Amazon. And we said, so, what can we do here? People come to Amazon. They have a great search engine, actually. And people use Amazon to search for books sometimes in lieu of a library catalog. So what can we do here to make this a more useful portal into book collections? And developed a widget. So if you click, if you're on the MIT network or a proxy server, and you click on a book on Amazon, and the MIT libraries own that book, a little MIT pops up next to the title. And if you click on that MIT, it'll take you directly into the MIT library's catalog, and you can ask to have the book delivered to your desk. If it's out on loan, you can ask to have it recalled. And it's just, or if it's in the library, you can just go pick it up. So we've built these widgets and these interfaces to some of the search engines that we know everybody uses because it's a fabulous way. We'll never have a search engine that's in the MIT libraries that's as good as Amazon's. So why not take advantage of that wonderful capability, but link it directly to the MIT libraries? So if you want to buy the book, just buy it, right? But if you want to read the book, you can get it from the MIT libraries.
You didn't mention Google Book, which is a counterpart to Google Scholar. It only deals with books, and then it'll go to the passage describing what you want, except if the book's copyrighted, it's still on copyright, it'll give you selected pages.
Yeah, that's a complicated situation at the moment because of the lawsuit against Google over the book, the digitized book search process. Yes.
Are these features like the little M for MIT available to anybody, or just if you're part of the MIT community?
Well, you have to install the widget on your laptop, and if you're part, I mean, think how this works. You can get the widget and apply it in other circumstances, but you'd have to go talk to your own library about making that widget work for you. So the widget is a relationship between Amazon and the MIT libraries, but the widget is software, right? So you could also apply the software to a different environment. There are other libraries that are starting to do this.
So the widget doesn't know or care if I'm part of the MIT community, right?
Right. Correct. Right. You just need to download the widget from the library's website.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
What are you doing about the expenses? A lot of these sites are free. I know being at Stanford that you give up on the printed version of the journals, but then you have to pay a fee to JSTOR or whatever the delivery mechanism is for the electronic versions, which are somewhat less in the humanities and social sciences and a great deal more in the sciences. What are the economics of this?
I'll get to that in a minute. Okay, thanks. So what does the future hold, right? I like to tell people that the only thing that's changed about libraries in the last couple of years is the supply side, customer expectations, what the formats are of the material that we buy, what the costs and use constraints are of the material we buy. But other than that, as a business point of view, nothing else has changed. It's just, it's just our customers and our suppliers and our cost structure and what we can legally do with the content that we're getting. So when we think about the MIT libraries going forward, we have to say to ourselves, so what's a rational strategy for dealing with an environment where all the search and discovery tools are changing and we need to figure out how to connect to them like we do with widgets and relationships with Google Scholar. Students have a whole different set of expectations than they used to. They want it to be online, and it's expensive online. Digital versions of works are expensive. Interdisciplinarity is multidisciplinarity is very much a trend at MIT. The way faculty teach is changing. The publishing modes and delivery options are just unbelievably volatile at the moment. I mean, there's nothing about that environment that's stable. Every year we negotiate hundreds of contracts with online information providers. Every year the prices change. We never know what their business model is going to be because publishers are trying to figure this out at the same time. Some of the publishers are not-for-profit, some of them are for-profit, some of them are U.S., so we're paying in dollars, some of them are international, so we're dealing with currency fluctuations. So this whole future that libraries are working in is incredibly dynamic, incredibly unstable, very volatile, and expensive. So to the question about how do we deal with the cost structure associated with digital content, the answer is by throwing money at it, because not only does the digital content cost money, but you have to build an infrastructure behind it to make it work in your environment. So isn't this nostalgic? After all this volatility, looking at an ancient rare book library is enough to sort of make your heart flutter and imagine that wouldn't it be lovely to walk in there and smell those musty books. So we have some of that at the MIT libraries. We have amazing historical collections. We have fabulous rare books and manuscripts. And we're just in the process of making them useful because, in my view, libraries are a tool for productivity and they need to be used. We don't own anything that we want to sit on. Everything we have, we want to be used, we want to have used. So we're working with faculty in the history of science and technology to make sure that the works we have that are rare and historical and unusual are working. So this is something, a question you hear. For 25 years, people have been telling me the library is dead. Well, and is a bookless library still a library? Well, have the next slide. This is, I like to use this example of a bookless library because the Stanford Engineering Library announced this spring that they were going to be all digital library, no books, no nothing. And a friend of mine sent me this photograph which shows just about as many books as we have in the engineering library at MIT, because to say that there is a bookless library is more of a concept statement than a reality. In fact, books are here to stay. They're a good format. They're a useful medium. We subscribe to 500,000 electronic books in the MIT libraries, and the kids want us to buy more paper books. So I think, there is no technology medium that has supplanted prior media with any degree of success. So we're pretty convinced that what we're looking at, next slide, is a solution for libraries in the future that involves what Nicholas Negroponte used to call bits and atoms. So content can be made digital, but it's not necessarily as useful when it's digital as it is when it's on paper. There are lots of different kinds of disciplines that are not well supported by a format that is delivered to you on a screen this size. Architects, art history, maps, there are lots of disciplines, lots of kinds of content and information, music scores. I don't know if somebody can perform a work of music off a screen, and we're experimenting with some digital versions of music scores, but most musicians like to mark up their score, and most musicians like to have a paper copy of it. And last time I went to Symphony in Boston, I didn't see any screens there. So there are many kinds of materials that really are not rendered well in digital formats. So our view is that you need to have the format that works for the purpose. Right? We don't have religion about this. If paper works for the purpose, we're going to have paper. If digital works for the purpose, we're going to have paper. And we can be that way because we're at MIT, right? When you live in the belly of the beast, you can say, well, what's the right solution to this? Similarly, we do in-person instruction. We have a big reservoir of online guides for students. So if an undergraduate student is starting to write a paper at 2 o'clock in the morning and the libraries are closed, there is a place they can go to that says, this is how you do it. And it'll walk them through the planning to write a paper. We have a huge and rapidly growing GIS service and system in the libraries, and we have a huge map collection because maps work differently than GIS. We have fabulous places to work, and you can get to the library on mobile devices. We have places where you can work together and places where you can work alone. So the way we think about where the libraries will be in the future is really in terms of two platforms. One platform is digital, one platform is physical. And just as you look at retail operations and how retail stores also let you order things online, and when you're online, it'll tell you where you can go for a retail store. So we're looking at two different platforms that are integrated and blended. So you can start with our website and get just about anything you want. And you can use your smartphone and get much of what you want. And we're adding to that capability all the time. And we're doing that by virtue of converting our subscriptions from print to electronic. So as you can see, 10 years ago, our print subscriptions, I have to put my glasses on to read these small numbers. Our print subscriptions were about 51% of our collections, and now they're the overwhelming majority. They're about 80%. Our electronics are 81% of our collections. So we've really flipped our resources where it's appropriate into electronic versions, and we're running tests. We're running a real-time test every day to make sure that that's the right solution.
Is it books and journals, or just journals mostly?
It's increasingly books. Books are relatively new in digital formats, and we haven't had the kind of license that we wanted for them. The consumer model for electronic books does not work for education. So we won't sign an agreement that will only let one student at a time, for instance, borrow a book. We seek to sign agreements where as many students as want to can get access to a book and use it, because it's not useful to us
So
otherwise.
with electronic books, several students can use it at once, whereas an actual book, when it goes out,
Right.
goes out
And we won't sign an agreement where you have to pay for a device in order to be able to use it, because we don't think it's appropriate to ask students to buy a reader. So we look for contracts where the electronic books can be delivered to multiple users, where the electronic books can be read on a multiple of devices, and where the content is relevant to the educational programs and research programs at MIT. So.
I was at the library committee at Stanford. We discussed electronic books, but the director didn't point out that an electronic book can be borrowed by several people. That's a big difference.
It's a big difference. Yeah, right. Well, we think that the way MIT works, that's the right way to do it. And our journal contracts are that way. Our electronic journals can be used by multiple users, right? So I mentioned a little earlier how complex it is, though, to take all of these different streams and turn them into a variety of services. And you can see how incredibly active our websites are. Over 1 million hits to the library's websites in 2010, 4 million page views. We currently subscribe to 48,000 e-journals. Our DSpace, which is MIT open access articles, MIT theses, other MIT content, almost 12 million downloads last year. So you can see that putting this content up on the website really has made a huge difference in our collections and services. Thanks. And this is a schematic of what it takes to do that behind the scenes. And this actually is 2 years old. It's considerably more complex than that. So if you think of libraries as places that have shelves and tables and chairs, the 21st century library looks like this. So we've got systems analysts and programmers and developers, and it's a really big, complex enterprise, series of interconnected enterprise systems that we run in order to make all of this happen. But we still have print material. So we still have, we circulated 350,000 items, physical items from our collections last year. 600,000 people walked through the doors and sat down and did work. That's, you know, so when you think about the bits and atoms, even as this is just a snapshot of downloads from our 10 most heavily used databases, 4 million downloads compared to 350,000 books borrowed. But also, our instruction program has grown to the point where we had 7,500 people attend one of our instruction programs, because this stuff isn't easy to use. It's not intuitive, it's not easy to use, the interfaces are complex, and so we put a lot of energy into making that happen. But, of course, at the same time, we are digitizing our rare books and special collections and working with MIT faculty to make these resources available. And I can tell you that when an MIT student who's studying metallurgy comes into the MIT archives and rare book collection reading room and is able to handle a book that was printed in 1621, that has a woodcut that shows the earliest thinking about metallurgy, it just blows them away. So to have a sense of that continuum of science and the fact that they're going to be playing a role in that in their careers is quite inspirational to them. And we're in the process, thanks to some friends of the libraries, of digitizing some of our more interesting prints and images. So the Veiled Balloon Collection, which is an amazing collection of quite whimsical, actually, renderings of people's idea of flight, we're also digitizing and putting up on the web. So, in terms of taking care of our atoms, we have lots of different kinds of study spaces. We have individual study spaces scattered throughout the libraries. This is, I just took this off the balcony of the Hayden Library, and this is what we call working together alone. So these are folks who've come to the library to work in an environment that helps them think and be productive. And each one of them is working in, it's not group study, but you see how important power is? Power may be the most important educational technology in the world today. Kids have got to be able to plug in. And the other thing that you see, people say to me, well, you know, isn't everything going all digital? Well, you look at actual people actually working, and they've got their laptop, and they've got a book, and they've got paper, and they've got their iPhone, and they've got, you know, they just, all of their technology and pieces of paper are layered around them. And I think that's because we're starting to know from cognitive science that you remember better if you write something down. So we see kids writing things down, taking notes. I sat next to a junior at a committee meeting the other day, and he was taking copious notes by hand. And I said to him, gee, that's so interesting to see you taking notes by hand. And he said, well, you know, when I was in high school, I used to take notes on my laptop. But I realized that I learned better when I took handwritten notes. And sitting next to me on the other side was a guy from the Pike-Hour, the brain science people. And he said, oh yeah, that's true. The cognitive process of writing something down means that you literally do remember it better. And this kid had stumbled on that on his own. So you just see, I mean, it just seems to me it's not ever going to be all digital just because we're hardwired in other ways. So I'm just going to whip through the last of these slides because I want to leave a little time for questions. So we've got like 39 spaces, and they're video conference enabled, and they can be scheduled online, and we've got these group study rooms which are so popular that they're we did put in an online scheduling system so that the kids could actually not have to fight at the door about who got into it. And we have a distance education group in the libraries that now supports video conferencing, because video conferencing has become a very important way that students connect with one another. We've got, at MIT, we have UROPs and UPOPs and IROPs, and students are on the road, and we've got MISTI programs where students spend time abroad. And so being able to talk with one another across video conferencing capability that runs on the internet is really important. But we also have, you may know, in the Forbes Cafe, we put in what's called a wormhole, which is a direct connection, video conferencing connection between the Forbes Cafe and the Stata Center and the new engineering building at Stanford. So students in the engineering school at Stanford can walk up to the wormhole and say, hi, is there anybody there? And talk to somebody who happens to be on the MIT end. And it's really just, it's a lot of fun. So, and there's the wormhole. I forgot, I put in a slide of the wormhole. So that's, this is the guy on the left is at MIT, and the guy on the screen is at Stanford. So our problem, you know, this theory about how people learn, some people think you're filling the bucket and some people think you're lighting a fire. Well, at MIT, there's like a really big bucket, right? And there's a lot to get in that bucket. But we also think that in the libraries, our job is to help them understand that P-sets aren't always going to be there. Sometimes they're going to have to make their own P-set if they're going to solve the problem. And that good information is a productivity tool. Knowing how to use information is a personal productivity tool that will serve them well all their lives. And so what we do when we talk to MIT students is we try to help them understand that if they understand how a discipline works, how the literature is organized, how people in that discipline have their conversations, they can join the conversation earlier and more robustly. And if they understand what an article is and the context for that article, they'll be able to participate more fully and use prior work more ethically too, because they don't always get good grounding on what's plagiarism and what isn't, and how to think about these kinds of work. So we really have a very practical, pragmatic, productivity-oriented approach to why you need to learn how to use a library and evaluate information resources. And we have a digital instruction program that helps them do that. It's a sort of state-of-the-art instructional program, and we do a lot. We run programming in the context of courses. We run our own programs. It's, I don't know, it's booked all the time is all I know. We're trying to figure out how to do another one. We have a GIS lab, which we're in the process of expanding, because geographic information systems are very much a part of the research that goes on at MIT and the future. And we have a very robust social sciences data center, because students increasingly need to think about social science data in the context of engineering as they apply engineering in their lives. We have Tech TV in the libraries, and as you can see, there's just a tremendous amount of traffic in the instructional materials that we put up. So we just have to assume that it's being useful to MIT students. And this is just, again, a snapshot of the magnitude of the digital resources that we're building and the use that they receive in the MIT community. So how do we know what students need? We ask them. We do a lot with surveys and ethnographic studies and so on. And that's how we go. So I just want to acknowledge and thank some of the folks in the libraries who helped me prepare this little presentation. They're great folks, and those smiling faces are real. And they smile a lot, and they're just great folks. So, questions? Thank you. Oof, oof.
Sure.
Outstanding. Here's our moderator. Okay.
You spent quite a bit of time talking about how students are so focused on search and how they can use the library system. I imagine, and you touched upon this in the very beginning, students are also completely time slicing with instant messaging across all sorts of different platforms. So how do you see that? Is there any effect of that kind of mentality in how they use the library system?
What they tell us, we did an ethnographic study last year where we gave kids cameras and tape recorders and notebooks, and we asked them to track their information-seeking behavior and the way they used information for a whole week, and then sit down and describe to us how they sought information. And it turns out they have two modalities. If they're looking for something quick and dirty, they use the techniques that they learned when they were younger. But if they're looking for something that's course-related, that has to do with their academic work, they are much more inclined now to use their library training, to go to the library's website and look for what they need, to contact the departmental liaison that works with their department, and to approach it in a totally different modality. So what I find interesting is they're starting to bifurcate their lives. They come to the libraries because the cell phones are turned off and they can concentrate, and the distractions are not so invasive and omnipresent. You know, they shut off their email beeps because, you know, there are quiet places in the libraries where you're not supposed to annoy your neighbors. So they shut off the persistent, annoying, answer me now, answer me now, answer me now, somebody wants you, somebody wants you. They shut that stuff off when they come into the libraries. And they use a different modality for searching for information, seeking information, when they're looking for information that's relevant to their intellectual work as opposed to their social lives. Yes, sir.
Well, when I graduated from MIT almost 50 years ago, I interviewed with a company there in Technology Square, and one of their sales pitches as to why I should go to work for them was, if you work here, you'll have access to the professors and the libraries and all the resources of MIT. I chose to come to California, and I'm glad I did. But my question is...
Climate's better.
Much better. To what extent are some of the... Obviously out here, we are not on any of the local MIT computer networks. To what extent do we as alumni have any special access to the MIT resources, either on a free or even on a subscription basis, that we can use some of these resources, or maybe we could get the text of some of the books? I realize there are copyright issues. Can you make any comments about this?
Sure, sure. This is probably the most frequent question that I get from MIT alumni, actually, and it's a source of great personal frustration to me. Electronic resources are licensed. They're not sold. So we negotiate contracts with publishers of these digital resources such that it's a true negotiation. It's a balance of what kind of rights and privileges we want in the content for our community and the price. And it's a very unstable environment, except that the publishers, frankly, many of them have virtual monopolies of the content, which makes it a not even-handed negotiation, although we have walked from time to time when we thought what publishers wanted was just outrageous. And often they'll come back, because it's MIT. But in terms of being able to make these resources available to alumni, The best we have been able to achieve so far is to insist that anyone who walks into the MIT libraries can use these resources. So if you're in Cambridge, Massachusetts, you can use these resources if you walk in the library, but I cannot yet get some of the large commercial publishers or even some of the big society publishers to agree to let alumni onto the network. I've been talking with the Alumni Association about this for a number of years because, you know, frankly, it's probably a problem that money could solve, but getting the energy behind it just has been difficult. And most of the databases that are easy to provide are not the ones you want. You can get those from your public library anyway.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think we need the microphone here.
Okay. I've discovered something really amazing about Google that maybe most people don't think of. If I come up with a theory that one thing causes something else, let's say I came up with the idea that smoking causes cancer. Of course, everybody knows it does, but something more obscure than that. And I type in smoking into Google, and then I type in the word cancer. It will find articles that immediately that verify my hypothesis. And often what it finds are in books. And it'll give you, you know, it'll say it's in such and such a book on such and such a page. It says smoking causes cancer. And then you can get the book provided it's not on copyright. So now if you've got a bunch of electronic books that MIT bought and owns, you want to teach students to do what I do. That if they have an idea and they think it's original, I say nobody ever thought of this before, but type it into Google and you'll find out people did think of it before and it's published, and you'll get a very authoritative source saying that yeah, smoking causes cancer, even if you thought that up on your own for the first time. You thought, and then you want to get the books. Since Google has a copyright problem. The ability to get them get the student into the book immediately once they got a text reference. In other words, go into Google Book, but you're blocked. But yeah, Google Book will tell you, for example, that it's in there. You'll get a hit that says, yeah, there's a passage in there that says smoking causes cancer, and then you click on this. On the thing that says it, and it'll say clearly that it's in there, but then you want to see it and it'll be blocked. So it'll, when you get the hit on Google, it'll say, yeah, it's in, here's the sentence you're looking for, and then you click on it, and where's the sentence? It's blocked because it's copyrighted. So then the question is, does your library have it, and can you immediately get that book and see the page that says smoking causes cancer?
Well, we cannot digitize books that are copyrighted without permission of the copyright owner.
But if you buy an electronic book, haven't you already done that?
Not all books are available electronically. Some of the major publishers are not making their books available electronically because they're afraid of cannibalizing their prints.
I see. But if you have, say you have an electronic book, is it searchable in such a way that somebody can type into a search engine and get a page that says what they're looking for, like smoking causes cancer, the page that says smoking causes cancer. If you own the book in electronic form, you should be able to let someone search within the book and then find what they're looking for by typing in keywords and then go to that page and actually see the page. You can do that with Google Book if the book's off copyright. If somebody says something, if you're looking for something that was published more than 75 years ago, you'll get the whole book.
Well, it's a function of what the digital file is, right? So if the digital file has a searchable index, then probably you can. That's a function of how the work is, what the format, but if it's provided as PDFs.
Oh, okay, yeah. No, yeah. If you have the text, you can search page by page. You don't need the index.
So it just depends on how the publisher has organized it. A lot of older books, in particular, are just PDFs. They're not searchable files.
Yeah, Google has it searchable, and if it's off copyright, you can find anything you want.
Right. So you know, that's another really good example of how fragmented and immature I think, is a way to think about how immature this environment is. So if you're searching for something and you search in a very narrow area, JSTOR is a good example of that. Some students discover JSTOR very early in their academic careers. It's a fine database and it's got a lot of high quality content in it, but it doesn't have anything in engineering, for example. So we find engineering students who discovered JSTOR for one of their Haas distribution requirements, and they go back to JSTOR for everything, even though it doesn't include journals or books in the topic that they're searching for. So I think we had a question over here. I think, Stephen, sorry. Go ahead, as long as you're there. Yeah.
While the mic's here, and as an old member of your visiting committee, we have Brewster Cale working out here on
yes, you
internet
sure do.
archiving,
Yeah.
and I don't know if he's cooperating with you, but how are we dealing with the obsolescence of digitally stored material? That's question one. Question two is, see, how would I phrase that? Is the Media Lab collaborating with the libraries on the invention of search robots or search mechanisms that assist our students in their searches? Is that a rarefied activity, or is it actually a major part of modern librarian work?
Well, I would say that search as a software is pretty mature at this point. What's not mature is the capacity of a search engine to search across multiple metadata schema, across multiple genres and format types. The English language is a really poor finding aid. Really bad finding aid, which is why the medical literature is organized around mesh headings, which are very specific. If you're looking for a certain kind of disease, you can look for the mouse test, you can look for the rabbit test, you can look for the human test, you can. If you're looking for, you don't just look for cancer, you look for all the different kinds of cancer that are. So it's a highly structured, hierarchical metadata schema that lets you mine the literature of medicine, both clinical and research, using a controlled vocabulary. So free text searching is incredibly inefficient unless you're looking for something really narrow and precise. I mean, try searching, the classic example that people use is, so you're looking for automobiles, but you don't know whether you want automobile or automobiles, so you shortcut it and you get everything that's auto. So the mechanism of search are not complicated. What is complicated is the corpus of content that search operates across and what sorts of metadata schema have been developed for the specific content that's being searched and how well that metadata has been applied so that you can find it. I mean, searching for video is a classic example. That's something that's, it's getting better, but you'd say you're searching through a corpus of video on tech TV. Unless the metadata reflect what you're looking for, you won't find it. Finally. Thank you for your patience.
I still have this question, and it concerns the foreign language literature.
Yes.
The sort of underlying assumption of what you've said so far is that everything worth knowing is in English, and that MIT students probably operate mostly in English. But what about the literature and the scientific literature in particular in other languages? How are you supporting that?
Well, we subscribe to a lot of foreign language scientific and technical literature, for starters. And the foreign language material is not so readily available in digital formats, so it's harder to get to. Although there are countries. I mean, France, for example, has made a commitment to making sure that the literature of France is made available on the web. So, because if it's not on the web, in many cases, it might as well not exist, right? And journals from in foreign languages from other countries are increasingly expensive to get. Paper shipping is increasingly expensive. And I think what we're seeing, I went to China last year and had some meetings with National Academy of Science of China, looking to see if there was some kind of exchange program we could do there, because there's fabulous research going on in China, really interesting, serious research going on. And what they would like, of course, is for the world to learn to speak Chinese. And they think it'll come sooner or later. But the automatic translation is increasingly good, and I think what's happened with a lot of the scientific and technical literature is that English is the de facto language at this point. If you want your work, if you're a scholar or a researcher and you want your work to have impact, you have to get it into English. You know, it may not be fair, but that's basically the way it works.
I was struck by your comment a couple minutes ago that that the mechanisms of search are mature or are pretty well set. And my impression is that search is viewed by the researchers at Google and at a number of startups in Silicon Valley as just an interim step, that what you really want is not a way to find sources, but a way to find answers.
Well, I think that is their long-term plan. I mean, one of the challenges we face at the moment is that people who own these big corpuses of content have come to understand that data mining is the future. So if you've got a big corpus of content, being able to mine that data and recombine it in ways that tell you different things about that content, that's the next wave of primary research in published literature. So to the extent that data mining and then flowing from data mining simulations and visualizations that take the results of that kind of data mining and display it in a way that shows you connections to the point of connections, shows you connections that you never would have seen if you just did a straight search against it, that really physically visualize relationships, is an incredibly powerful tool. So that's clearly I wouldn't call that search. I mean, that's data mining and visualization and simulation and a lot of things that have to do with processing the content as opposed to finding specific. One of the nicest illustrations I've ever seen shows a stagecoach on railroad tracks being dragged behind a coal-fired steam engine. And the smoke is billowing out of the stacks, and it's blowing into the carriage in the back, and setting the curtains on fire and everything else. And that's sort of where we are, right? We're taking the stagecoach that we have used to manage scholarly and research material, and we put it on a set of rails. And there's smoke blowing in the windows at the moment, but sooner or later, the kinds of developments that are possible will change the way we actually think about scholarship and research. And the data environment is right where that is. And the National Academy of Science and the National Science Board and National Science Foundation are very well aware of the fact that it is research data that's being produced now that needs to be captured and managed and mined in a way that will advance progress much more quickly than an individual article might. So, yeah, it's a brave new world out there. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So much of what was talked about tonight was how technology is used outside the classroom to or how kids use technology outside the classroom to learn. So my question is more in line with how can we integrate technology inside the classroom? When I was at MIT, Teal was still in its infancy, and by peer review, it wasn't very successful. But I don't think that just because the students didn't like it doesn't mean that it was necessarily a bad step forward. But what steps are we taking to integrate technology inside the classroom?
Yeah, actually there's a big initiative going on in a collaboration between CSAIL, Course 6, and the Media Lab to develop, I just saw, if you're looking for a part-time job, I just saw an ad where they're looking for kids to help them write software that will implement a new way of teaching. In some, I guess they've got about a dozen courses. They're going to implement educational technology in the classroom and assess it. They're starting to use tutors. In addition to the Teal system, they're starting to use educational tutors in some of the core courses in physics and chemistry. So it's working its way into the classroom to the degree that it's caused a major conversation this fall at MIT. I serve on MIT's Council on Educational Technology, and we're doing the easy things, you know, video taping lectures and so on. But there's a next step that has to happen at MIT, and there's a cohort of people at the Institute that are determined to make that happen. So I think you'll see some interesting developments in the next 12 months in that regard, but that's a good question. So keep your eye on us and keep asking that question.
I was thinking that if I find a book that I want to read, I go to the library and I check it out for 2 weeks, and then I take it back. Is there a technology that allows you to go to the library, download the book, and it erases itself after 2 weeks, so that you can still borrow it for that amount of time?
Yeah, there's a technology called Overdrive, which is used heavily in libraries, that lets you borrow only one patron at a time can borrow the electronic book, which is why we don't think it's going to work very well for the Academy. You download the book, there's usually a waiting list for the popular ones, but you download the book onto your laptop. It depends. Typically, Kindle has just joined the program. You didn't used to be able to download your book to Kindle, but you download the book to your e-reader, and it goes away. It just disappears after 2 weeks.
You can't do that with a MIT tech book.
No, we don't subscribe to the Overdrive system because we really just don't want students to have to compete for electronic books. We really want to make sure, if there are popular books at MIT, we put them on reserve so everybody gets a crack at them. And we don't want to have a system in place where a book is locked up for 2 weeks and nobody else can read it, because those books are not inexpensive.
Publishers demand that you only let it out to one person at a time.
I'm sorry?
Who stops you from allowing multiple users to download the book?
The software.
The software. Can I ask you also, how do you enforce the no cell phone rule?
Peer pressure. Yeah, it's peer pressure.
The software is sent to two people, can't read it simultaneously.
That's correct. Yeah, right. In fact, it's just to give you a sense of how volatile this whole publishing environment is these days. Random House joined the Overdrive system, and they were making their books available to public libraries in this one reader at a time for 2 weeks, and then it disappears. They began to be concerned about the impact on their hard copy sales. And so unilaterally and arbitrarily, they said, oh, we've changed our mind. when a book circulates 26 times, you have to buy it again. So, I don't know, you know, they just pulled it out. As far as I know, they just pulled it out of the air. Okay, I'm getting the high sign. I think our videographer is running out of tape. And we thank him for his work. Let's give Hank a round of applause. And I want to give you a round of applause for coming this evening. This was just terrific. Thank you so much.